Man, it's absolutely crazy that so many franchise owners are paying $200-$300 a lead and still getting ghosted. It happens way more often than it should. So if you're feeling that way, you're completely normal. Welcome back to Franchise This. I'm your producer, Joseph Lewin, and I'm joined by your regular host, Sean McKay. And we're going to be talking about and breaking down what's really breaking your franchise lead gen and how to fix it. So, Sean, really excited to be talking to you about this.
Thanks, man. Thanks for hosting as always.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So what I'd love for you to do kicking this off is just break down what's really behind the lead quality problem when landing a new franchisee.
It's taken me a bunch of years to really figure out the key components or the key pitfalls across all sorts of different accounts that we've managed and worked with and seen managed by other people. I think it really comes down to three things. One is just lead quality. A lot of times they just suck. 50, 60, 70% of leads are just abysmal. Sometimes they're not even real people. Two is the strategy to how to spend the money, how much to spend, how fast to spend, how to budget it per month, when to spend more, when to spend less. And then the follow-up process leading to just really bad close rates. So I think really it comes down to those three things. If you could fix those three things, doesn't matter if you're paying $300 a lead, although you shouldn't be, you're going to be way happy with your customer acquisition cost. But yeah, we could bring all those metrics down using those three tactics.
Yeah, I know we talked through some of those things on the previous episode and talked in a little bit more detail about these challenges and some of what happens from that. But just want to lean into that a little bit more because they each compound each other in how disastrous it becomes if you get any of them wrong, right? Because if your lead quality is horrible and you're paying $300 a lead, let's just say 50% to make it easy or no good, then you're paying way more than $300 per actual good quality lead, right? And then that makes it so that when you're spending your money, you're going to want to be careful about what you're spending so you just don't totally blow through it. So you might end up not spending enough even to actually get the right amount because you don't want to just blow through your budget in a couple months and not be able to see the result. And finally, like when you do actually get the good people in there, you're so burnt out from talking to a bunch of people who are tire kickers anyway, that you don't do a good enough job getting in front of the people who are actually truly interested, and you end up losing people who may have actually bought from you. So you could definitely see how those all compound on top of each other.
Yeah, man, it's like you're the expert in this now. Yeah, exactly that. Everything you just said. And they're not easy problems to solve.
Cool. The good news is we've got you on here and you've helped people solve these exact issues. So what we want to do, and just if you're starting to tune out and your eyes are glazing over and you're going, oh, this is just a pitch. No, we're going to actually go through some really specific things, some really practical things that you could go and apply tomorrow. We're going to really get tactical. So whether you end up going, hey, I'd like more help with this or not, this episode is going to be valuable and you're going to have some things you could take away and start implementing. Sean, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the lead quality issues specifically and dig into what are some of the things that people can do to make sure they're getting the most out of the spend that they are doing.
Honestly, there's a few reasons why somebody might put in bogus info, but that's probably the biggest thing that we see causing lead quality issues. It's just wrong phone numbers, wrong emails, fake names, and it's real hard to follow up with leads who don't give you their real information. And so one of those is generating leads on, say, Meta. You have automated forms that have autofill on them. Your website form could have autofill on them, and that autofill could be filled with the wrong information, perhaps. But you also could have people who just are maliciously putting the wrong thing. They just want to see what happens when they click the button. There's a lot of things, a lot of reasons. But one of the easiest ways to solve this is just do an OTP code on both the email and phone number. OTP, like a two-factor code. Those texts you get from when you log into your Best Buy account or something. We could do the same thing on the web form. Somebody types in their phone number. There's a button they have to press. It sends a code to make sure that they get the code, type that back into the form, validates that they actually have access to that phone number. And same thing with the email address. And if you get the right phone and right email address and they submit that form, you could be darn certain that's a real human. At least right now, there's not a good way to fake that. I'd say that's a significant impact that's really quite easy to do from a technology standpoint today.
Yeah, I love that. And that I was actually just having a conversation earlier today with a guy who runs webinars, and he said some similar stuff with having a little bit more qualification up front before the webinar, and how that massively increased the amount of sales calls that they're generating out of it, because you're making sure that they're real people. You're not just like throwing everybody who said they're going to attend into a bucket and treating them all the same. You're actually doing some legwork up front to make sure that the conversations you're having afterward are worth having. And then what are some ways that you could use third-party data to qualify a
Yeah.
little bit better?
Yeah, so the other half is to make sure that you're targeting the right people to begin with, because even if they give you the correct information, if in the case of a franchise, let's say the franchise minimum liquid required capital is 150 grand, if the person doesn't have that 150K, no point in getting that lead. It might as well be a bad lead. It might as well be somebody who gave you a fake name or number. We certainly want to make sure that we're targeting people who have the financial means to actually take on your model. And yeah, there's ways to do this in the various platforms, but Meta has a lot of restrictions on targeting based on income levels. And in particular, they see franchising as a restricted category. For some reason, they treat it like employment, and therefore equal opportunity employment stuff applies. And so targeting people based on income is just a big no-no there. But that aside, if you had good third-party data from other sources that do have financial metrics attached to them, there are ways to target people in every platform really who have a minimum certain net worth, income. Maybe they meet some other demographics or psychographics that are important to you for your system, for your franchise. But ultimately, this additional step is going to cost you somewhere in the range of 10 to 20% more in your ad spend. So that it's not free. But I find that you're going to get a much better qualified lead in general when you use this sort of data. Now, the other option too is to also have your own first party data. And that's really the key, is if you're collecting your own data of people who've been to trade shows and multi-location operators and folks who have been interested in your franchise in the past, curating your own list is great. Just most emerging brands don't have it. Sometimes you can work with marketing firms like ours, or maybe your consultant, your FSO. They might have lists of their own that you can work off of as well. But having good data to make sure you're targeting the right people, and then making sure those people who are filling out the forms are giving you the correct information. Those two key components, and you're on your way to getting some good leads.
Yeah, and I think the key to what we're talking about here is, yes, we want to bring your cost per lead down as much as possible, but that's not necessarily the best metric. It's when you're spending $300 per lead, or if you're spending $300 per lead, are you actually getting on a call with the right kind of person at the end of that? And if you're not, then you probably need to do some more qualification with the OTP verification and that side of things. And you probably need to target and make sure you're talking to the right people. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting in trouble. So let's move on to talk about spend. And I think this is an interesting one, because I think that for a lot of people, they want to maybe limit how much they're spending per month, because they're going, hey, I'm thinking it's going to take me about 9 months to land somebody. And so my budget's going to run out if I spend it all up front. But you made an interesting point when we were leading up to this, talking about almost flipping that on its head, and how spending less money on ad spend actually ends up increasing your costs significantly and can cause you some trouble. So I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, first of all, just there's more new franchises every year. And a recent study from franchise.org showed that around 85% of franchises expect to spend more in their advertising this year than last. About a third of franchises expect their cost per lead to go up. So there's rising costs. And so if you're entering the market right now, you got to enter it competitively. In advertising, I always say that's like whoever spends the most wins. It really is a game that's rigged for those who are willing and able to spend more, because there's efficiencies at scale. But beyond that, just for even a small budget entry, a new emerging brand, you have fixed costs per month, because likely you're not running your own ads. Maybe you are, but even if you are, you got time and costs associated with that. So there's maybe agency fees that you're paying. You probably have somebody doing some sales work for you, whether that be your own salesperson or an FSO, and that's going to be perhaps a monthly retainer or contract, or maybe you're paying your own salesperson out of pocket as a W-2 perhaps. All of that, you have all these fixed costs that are tied to your lead gen that are outside of the advertising spend itself. And so if you don't spend enough and you don't get a lot of leads, all that other time and effort and all those other people's time and effort is somewhat wasted. So just the most simple thing is, let's say that the leads are going to cost you $100 a lead on average, and you're willing to spend $2,000 a month. That means you're going to get about 20 leads in a month, and 20 leads is going to make for a pretty boring sales job. Like the person doing sales only having 20 leads to follow up with, probably 30 or 40% of them aren't responsive. They're not going to have a lot of opportunities to try to get at bat and close some deals. So that leads to frustration on their end, perhaps turnover, and regardless, you're paying for it all along the way. Whereas if you had spent $5,000 a month and you're still at that $100 a lead, you're going to end up with 50 opportunities. And a layer on top of that, as I mentioned before, whoever spends the most wins. You generally see a decreasing cost per lead as you spend more, at least up to a certain point. Sometimes it teeters out, sometimes it starts going up. But most of the time, there is a lot of leeway to spend more, especially if your franchise is available in multiple markets or states. You have a lot of runway. You could be spending a lot more before your costs increase. And by spending more and more fast, your total costs generally are lower. So, again, it might take you 300 leads to get one person to sign a deal with you. So the faster we can get to those 300 leads, assuming that we can verify they're real people and that you have good data to say that they're probably qualified financially, the faster we get to those 300 people, the better. Your total costs for an agency or a consultant or sales operator, all those are going to be less.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple other pieces that come to mind for me when we're talking about spending more and the speed aspect of it. One is when it comes to anything marketing and sales related, momentum is really important. And so if you are trying to land a franchisee, you might be thinking, oh, yeah, I'm in this for the long haul. But if you get to months 3, 4, 5, where you just feel like you're draining money and you're not seeing anything happen from it, even if you will get there in the same amount of time and in the same amount of budget, just a longer amount of time, it's really hard to just keep bleeding money over a long period of time and stay motivated to do that. And so by compressing that timeline and potentially getting more in your pipeline, it's going to be more likely that you're going to have the emotional energy to keep going, which sounds a little bit silly,
Right.
but I've seen that happen over and over again where people at the beginning are gung-ho, and the longer it goes time-wise, you just lose some of that energy. But the other piece of it with the time is we're going to talk a little bit in a second about your close rates, but sometimes you just need a certain number of at-bats, whether it's getting your targeting correct or getting the things at the bottom for nurturing. Maybe your sales guy is going to have a certain number of reps to actually figure out what's going on and
Right.
how to close right. And so if you don't get them enough reps close enough together, you're not going to give them what they need to actually fix the holes. And if it's too far apart, you're just going to miss the things that kind of tie the thread together and help you to do that.
Absolutely. And you also could be missing some opportunity in the market. You might miss that perfect person who is looking for your model right now. And if you're not getting enough saturation in that market, they may never see your ad. They're never clicking that button. Maybe they're finding somebody else's concept instead of yours. So there's a lot of opportunity costs associated with this. Like you said, the time and effort and dread of your salespeople not being tuned in or practiced. But yeah, I see it all the time. People think they want to dip a toe in and go shy, start small, and then scale up when it works. Realistically, you're going to just fail faster by spending fewer dollars. You're going to tire everybody out and you're not going to get those good opportunities. And I know that's easy for me to say because from my perspective as an agency, we make more when you spend more. So I have a reason to say that, I suppose. But truly, the data supports this too, that you spend less and, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. So long as you have your targeting tuned in and you can verify these are real people. And then the next step that you have your automations and follow-up sequence really tuned in, then you should be spending as much as possible.
Let's dig into that because close rates then become incredibly important. And I just want to state from the beginning here before we get into the details, if you fix those first two things we're talking about, your close rates are going to improve by themselves just without even doing anything. Because if you're getting the right people in and you're getting more of those, I guess more isn't necessarily true, but if you fix the first part where we're making sure you're getting the right people and you verify that they're right, your close rates are going to go up from that alone. So fixing that will help. But then there's a lot of different things that franchise owners typically don't do that are going to help increase those close rates. And that's the part that really moves the needle, because if your close rates go up a couple percent, you're just getting so much more value from fewer opportunities at that point. So what are some things that franchise owners can do to increase close rates for landing new franchise?
I think pretty much everybody at this point who's in this game is doing some sort of automation. But if you're not, That's number one. Make sure you're sending texts and emails and that you are doing so at a quick enough pace where you have the speed to lead. What I mean to that is like if you're getting a lead, you should be following up with them within the first 5 minutes. And if you can't do that with a human, then you can certainly do that with the text and email that's automated. So make sure you have a system of software to do that and get those automations set up. Also, just recognize, we talked about it last time, is recognize not everybody is necessarily ready to drop that nest egg they have on your concept right now today. They might be interested, they might want to learn more information. And so feed that curiosity through the funnel that you set up. I find a 3-to-1 ratio between direct sales and information is good. So for every direct sales, text, email, call to action, have 3 pieces of educational content that you send prior. For example, in a text message, you might want to send people a brochure. It's an easy one. You send people a link to your brochure if you have a digital copy of your pitch deck, maybe some information on the overview of the financials. You can also send them like, hey, where could the liquid capital come from? If you're an emerging brand, you're selling your first 10 concepts or 10 locations, you're probably not attracting a real seasoned franchisee. The people that you might be talking to, these leads, might be people who've never done this before, and they're nervous too. So if you can inform them, hey, the liquid capital requirement doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be sitting in your checking account. You can leverage your retirement accounts, for example. So those sort of things, the educational pieces that warm people up to your concept and let them know that you're going to help them. It's like a really good way to start the relationship and let them know that you're going to support them is to actually do it during this process. I think you can provide them some education right up front and throughout the whole process. If you're going to do a long-term drip campaign for a month or 2 months after they fill out the form, in the event that you don't close them right away, that could be all informational content. Again, I mentioned speed to lead. I think first 5 minutes is key. There's been a lot of studies, and I think I mentioned the joke about how every marketer and statistics, it's like we can all find a stat that supports our
Yeah.
claims. But with this, I think the close rate is significantly higher. I'll spare you a stat, is significantly higher by contacting somebody within the first 5 minutes. And the reason is because they are probably still in the platform or on the web page that they went to fill out the form. So it's super fresh. They can't say they're not. And if they had time to click your ad and get to your page and fill out your form, they probably have time for a quick 2-minute chat. And I'm not saying you're going to do your sales call full through on that first conversation, but there's a greater chance that you're going to get a hold of them because it's fresh in their mind. They know who you are. Yeah. I even go as far as on the form that we do on the submit confirmation says something along the lines of, hey, keep your phone in your hand. We're going to be calling you in the next few minutes. So that people know, like, that's the expectation that if that phone rings, you don't recognize that phone number, it's probably us. So I think those are all really key. The last thing, there's 100 things, but one more thing I think I'll add to this is that your CRM, your software, your automation tool should have a feedback loop that feeds back to maybe Google or Meta and lets them know through the conversion APIs, the technical stuff, whether or not a lead was good. So if you mark a lead as bad in your CRM, there should be a connection back to the targeting platforms that say, oh, that was bad. And that helps train the algos to find more of the right people instead. That feedback loop is so important. Otherwise, you could just be optimizing for cheap conversions, and maybe those cheap conversions all suck. If you inform the platforms like Google or Meta or whomever of the ideal profile through this feedback process, you're going to end up getting a lot better leads for a lot less dollars over time. So I think all of those are easily missed and super important.
Yeah, and as I kind of wrap up here, I'm going to share my own personal buying story that I think illustrates why some of these things are so important. And I think it brings it around because if you think about the last time you filled out a form, you probably had intent when you're filling out that form for something to happen. And the further away you get, the higher the chance that either you've decided to do something totally different, you've forgotten about it, you don't have time, or that somebody else actually answered that question. Maybe this isn't the only form that you filled out.
Right.
So like
right.
I was in charge of buying a software to find lead quality data actually for a client that I was working with. And I went and filled out a bunch of forms and I already knew what I needed in this case. I had an idea. I had insanely high intent and I needed to move quickly for this client. We had to get this info within a week or two and pay for it. And they had the budget, like everything was lined up to do it. And I had to go do a ton of research to figure out who even did this kind of stuff. Then I finally fill out the forms. And I think I reached out to 6 companies and none of them reached out to me the same day.
Wow.
And
Not even
then
the
I
same
think
day. Wow.
Yeah, I think there were two or three that reached out to me within 24 hours. Then I booked calls with them as soon as I could. And if I remember right, most of them didn't have any availability for calls until later that week or the following week. So they were already really pushing my timeline to be able to get anything done for this client. And then finally, I get on with all these guys. I have the conversations. I'll spare you the details of the rest of that. But then somebody reached out to me like 3 weeks later to respond back. And I'm like, dude, we've already like decided who we're going to go with. Everything's done. We're
Onboarded.
basically signed
Yeah.
it. Yeah, basically signed a contract, and you're just reaching out to me now. And you guys have spent all this money to do that, and then you don't even respond to me for 3 weeks. That's totally ridiculous. And if somebody would have called me on the phone right then, that would have been super helpful for me because I needed information right then. And so if you think that doesn't matter, like when somebody fills out that form, they typically do actually want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, and to that, I think I have a lot of clients who never really did a lot of advertising before. They just found natural success through word of mouth or what have you, brick and mortar locations. And obviously franchising is totally different. You're not going to find that word of mouth success generally. They're not sure how to handle leads. They're not tuned in with what to do when somebody fills out a form. They're used to just people walking in and saying, "Here's my money." And it's just so different when you're doing kind of a cold advertising campaign to a brand new audience. And so they're not used to that. I had a client once who generated 300 leads in a month. And at the end of the month, we were checking in with them. How's it going? What's going on? They were like, "Oh, we just haven't gotten around to calling them yet." It's like, what? All of them? Yeah, all of them. So
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh.
they just expected that, hey, if we don't call them, they're probably still going to buy from us anyway. Just like not the case. So yeah. And,
When you might
I
catch somebody who's
understand.
like scrolling or something, right? And they come across this ad and they never thought of it before. And all of a sudden they're like, what if I could have a franchise doing
Totally.
burgers? I
This
always
could be a
wanted to do that, right?
spur of the
Yeah, it's
moment
spare of the
thought.
moment. And
Yeah,
if like you call them, now you've engaged them, you're watering that seed, you're putting fertilizer on the seed, and you actually have a chance to grow. Whereas if you call them in a week, they might be on to the next crazy idea that they had and not care anymore. And when you're talking about something like this, where you're asking for somebody to invest their retirement, it sounds crazy to say it that way, but like people do actually make decisions about stuff like this and get bought into something really quickly if you catch them right when they're in the moment. But if you wait very long at all, that idea might be totally gone and they're on to the next one. And you want to catch them while you can.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I recognize that there's a lot of moving parts to this and a lot of emerging brands, a lot of brand new franchises aren't used to it. They don't have these things all figured out. And we didn't even mention everything like having a really tuned conversion optimized landing page or having a digital copy of your brochure. But there's so many moving pieces. And I think I'll just say once and for all on this show, but we offer a franchise accelerator package, which is all of this. It's a full lead gen package that combines everything you need from the ad creative and setup, tracking, third-party data, landing page, all the pieces we talked about today, the verification steps, and some things we didn't touch on. When a lead fills out a form on your landing page, we continue it on to a post lead survey so that they take some additional steps and we dive a little bit deeper into what they're looking for in their franchise opportunity and it further qualifies the lead. And of course, we help people with their spend strategy, really figure out their budget, their game plan, and make sure that third party feedback loop is in place as well. For any brands that are just starting up and don't have a clue where to go with this or have tried other companies before and there's a lot of individual players or maybe they don't have all the pieces, we got it all in one place.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And as we've been talking about this more, it just makes a ton of sense when you're working through this to find a partner who can help you because there is a lot of complication and I've run businesses before and when you're wearing a lot of hats and then you're trying to learn something new like this for the first time, it's definitely helpful to find somebody who actually knows what they're doing to help you. So, um, I'll just wrap it up with this. If people are listening to this and they either want just some more information and they want to learn more about the process and some of your recommendations, or they go, hey, yeah, that franchise accelerator package sounds pretty cool. Where should they go?
Of course, they should come right to our site, yoursitehub.com, and feel free to contact us. There's a button on there to schedule a time directly with me, a no obligation, no cost consultation where we can sit down and talk about your franchise and the model and the pricing and discuss it all. And shortly, we will have a dedicated page with the whole presentation available online so you can make your decisions virtually without having to go through the sales process at all. So make it easy. I'm a firm believer. Put your pricing out there, put your process out there, and the right people will find you.
Love it, Sean. Yeah. So this show, we're going to primarily be actually talking to a lot of franchise owners. So those are coming up. But you and I are going to have a few more conversations here on the live show as these first couple episodes. And then as we dig deeper, we're definitely going to be having franchise owners on to share their stories. And that's going to be really the main gist of what we're doing with this show. So definitely keep tuning in. We're excited to continue talking to franchise owners and getting the word out there about franchising. Sean, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks.